In this lecture, we're going to log the user in after they've registered. The registration is taken care of in the register form component. In the register function, we're using the create user with email and password function to create the user. It's also authenticating the user if their account was successfully created. The response from the function will be the user's credentials. We're storing the returned value in a variable called user credentials. We don't need to do anything with the variable. In the previous lecture, I discussed how we'd need to store the token returned by the authentication functions. Luckily, since we're using the SDK, that's taken care of for us. Firebase will store the token on our behalf. In addition, it'll send the token if it's available to any service that needs it. This includes Firestore. Below this, we're making a request to the database to insert the form data. We recently changed the rules to restrict writing permissions to authenticated users. The Firebase SDK will send the token along with this request. The code will continue to work as it did before. Let's try testing that out. In the Firebase console, navigate to the Authentication section. We're going to delete the user we've already registered. This is so we can start fresh. All the way to the right, click on the drop-down button. Delete the user from the app. Next, navigate to the database. We're not going to delete the collection. We want to delete the document. Documents can be deleted on the right column. At the top right corner, click the drop-down to delete the document. We're ready to test the registration. Open the app in the browser. Try registering a new account. We can successfully create an account. We didn't have to modify the code because Firebase sends the token to the database on our behalf. This process is the most significant benefit of using the Firebase SDK. It'll store the token and send it for us. There is one important point I want to make clear. Back in the register function, we're registering the user in the authentication service before we insert them into the database. We must perform these sequences of actions in this order. The token will not be available until the user is authenticated with the authentication service. If we were to swap the order, Firebase would throw an error because the user does not have permission to write to the database. We're going to make one more modification to the register function. Even though Firebase is keeping track of everything for us, we will store a Boolean value in the state to keep track of if the user is logged in. Let's look at our app in the browser for a moment. If we were to look at the navigation menu, we have a link for logging in. However, if the user is already logged in, then we'll want to change this to say log out. We can toggle the links by keeping track of the user's current authenticated state in the store. Switch over to your editor. In the store directory, create a new file called user.js. For this demonstration, we're going to create a new store for users. It's completely possible to create a single store. However, it's common practice to organize the state into separate stores for better management. In this file, import the define store function from the Pinia package. Next, export this function from the default namespace. The ID of the store will be called user. Pass in an object. In this object, define the state function. Lastly, add a state property called user_logged_in with an initial value of false. The next step is to toggle this property after the user successfully registers an account. Back in the register form component, we're going to update the register function. First, the store needs to be imported and registered with the component. At the top of the script block, import the map_writable_state function from the Pinia package. We're going to update the state of the component. Therefore, we are importing the writable function to allow us to do so. Next, import the user store with the following name, Use User Store. We've got everything we need. Time to register the state. Inside the Components Exported object, add the Computed object. Within this object, call the MapWritable function with the spread operator. Pass in the Use User Store variable as the first argument. The second argument is an array of state properties to map the component. Add the User Logged In state property. It's time to update this property. The state should be updated after the user has been registered. I'm going to update this property before updating the alert message. Set the User Logged In property to true. As simple as that, we've authenticated the user into our application. Firebase handles most of the complexities. On our side, we just need to keep track of the user's authentication status with a Boolean value. Let's give this a test. Open the Firebase console. Delete any users in the authentication service or users collection. We want to start fresh one more time. Then, try filling out the registration form in the app and submit it. We will receive a success message. Great! We are successfully keeping track of the user's current authenticated status in the state.